All right, today we're tackling one of the most famous, most fascinating, and, let's be honest, one of the most disturbing topics in the entire history of psychology. We're talking about the Milgram experiment. And I want to start with a question for you, one that really gets to the heart of all this. How far would you go to obey an order from someone in charge? I mean, really think about it. You know, the search for an answer to that very question, it all points back to the work of one man. So let's piece this story together and try to understand why this study is still so incredibly powerful today. To really get the experiment, first, you've got to get the person who dreamed it up, a social psychologist by the name of Stanley Milgram. So, this is him, Stanley Milgram. He was an American social psychologist who, back in the mid-20th century, cooked up an experiment that didn't just define his career, it kicked off decades of fierce debate about human nature itself. And this wasn't some small-time operation either. He was working at the highest levels of academia. He's connected to two of the biggest names you can think of, Yale University, which is where these famous experiments actually went down, and later, Harvard. Okay, so now that we know a little about the man, let's get into the experiment itself. At its core, this was a test of obedience, and it was designed to answer a deeply unsettling question. So what was the Milgram experiment exactly? Well, you can boil it down to this. It was an experiment designed to measure just how willing a person is to obey an authority figure, even when their instructions clash with their own conscience. And you've got to remember the timing here. This all happened in the early 1960s. That's so important because the whole idea was born in the shadow of World War II, when people were still trying to wrap their heads around how ordinary citizens could do horrific things, all because they were just following orders. So the basic idea seems simple, but the details are where it gets wild. Participants were told they were in a study about memory. So, step 1, an experimenter in a lab coat, that's your authority figure, gives the instructions. Step 2, the participant playing the teacher is told to give an electric shock to a learner in another room for every wrong answer. Now here's the kicker. The shocks weren't real, but the participant had no idea. They thought it was all legit. So step 3, the real study, was just measuring how far up that voltage dial they would go, just because a guy in a coat told them to. Which brings us to a huge question. Why are we still talking about a psychology experiment from more than half a century ago? Well, let's get into its impact. The results were just groundbreaking. They completely changed our understanding of human nature. What they found was that a staggering number of ordinary people would obey instructions to give what they believed were painful, even dangerous electric shocks to an innocent person. And why? Simply because an authority figure told them to. But it wasn't just groundbreaking, it was intensely controversial. I mean, the experiment put people through extreme emotional distress because they thought they were genuinely harming someone. This raised these massive ethical questions about deception and research, and that's a debate that is still going on today. And that powerful mix of a shocking discovery and a huge ethical controversy, that's a key part of its legacy. It's a study that left us with questions that just refuse to go away. So let's just quickly sum up the key takeaways here. The Milgram experiment was this iconic study on obedience to authority. It was conducted by Stanley Milgram at Yale back in the 60s, and its legacy is really two-sided. It's groundbreaking for what it revealed about us, and it's deeply controversial for how it did it. Which brings us right back to where we started, back to that one question that has haunted this experiment from the very beginning. After everything we've just gone through, you have to ask yourself, honestly, what would you have done?